So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on transitioning towards sustainability. We're really looking forward to helping some businesses implement sustainable practices, which is why we've joined together several experts today. So our basic format is pretty straightforward. First, we're going to just introduce our speakers. Then we're going to go to Trent, who's going to talk about sustainability and implementation. And we're going to do a little bit of a case study. Then we're going to move to our two experts from Oya Renewables, starting with Pallavi, who's going to talk about community solar. And then Graham here, who will be talking about energy transition services platform, which is quite a mouthful. And then, of course, the EV catalyst. Now, if you have any questions throughout any point of the webinar, just please pop them in the chat. And at the end, we'll answer any sort of questions. And of course, we'll provide contact information if you think of something after the webinar. So right now, I'm going to turn it to Trent, who will introduce himself and tell about all the great things he's doing. And then we're going to move to Pallavi and Graham, who will introduce themselves. And then we'll get started with Trent. So Trent.
Great. Thank you very much. Excited to be here. I appreciate the opportunity. My name is Trent Romer. I was a business owner for 30 years in the plastic bag manufacturing space, and our company was purchased by a private equity firm a couple of years ago, and they asked me to join them as a sustainability operating partner as we had transitioned our plastic bag manufacturing firm in a sustainable direction over the course of the last 4 or 5 years. So at this point, I'm tasked with going into portfolio companies for the private equity firm and introducing sustainability to those companies. And every journey is different. I wrote a book about my journey. It's called Finding Sustainability. And I have a second book coming out on sustainability in the fall. So excited to share some things. And I'm always learning too. So I get a lot out of this as much as hopefully I give you.
Thanks, Trent. Hi, everyone. My name is Pallavi, Senior Manager of Community Solar at Oya Renewables. Oya is a full-service energy transition provider and platform in North America. My role is to lead our client acquisition and management efforts for Oya's community solar program. And community solar is a very unique, no cost and easy way for businesses to integrate sustainability in their operations. And that's what I will be covering today in a few minutes. But thanks for everyone for taking your time to join us today and for all the great material we have for you today. So looking forward to it. Over to you, Graham.
Thanks, Pallavi. Good afternoon, everybody. So yeah, I've got many years of well-earned battle scars in the renewable energy sector, and my role within Oya is really to help you guys walk the walk and make your projects real. Everything on the behind the meter side, everything on the on-site side. That's my game, and understanding how to make these projects real. There's so much intent, but how to navigate it and do it in a profitable manner, that's where I come to the party. So that's me. Over to you, Trent, I think.
Super. Do I have controls here, or should I just say next slide?
Next slide is fine, and I'll yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, so we'll go to the next slide. So as I mentioned, I am a sustainability operating partner, which means I go to portfolio companies and try and introduce sustainability into corporations where some of them have a program and some of them don't at all. And what I really see myself as an educator, I feel like education leads to application, and that's sort of what I do, and try to get people to think in a slightly different way. So what is sustainability? We'll start with this sort of definition. Sustainability is defined by the United Nations as meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. I love the definition, but boy, is it big, hard to get your arms around. And I feel like a lot of times it feels paralyzing to take action on something so big. So what I try and do is break that down. One of the ways is to think about sustainability in terms of ESG. E meaning climate change, pollution, waste, things like that. S meaning the social things like employee health and well-being, community involvement. And G, I think the G is forgotten a lot. G is how are we managing the social and environmental programs within our organization? So ESG is really a bucketed approach to sustainability that helps companies identify risk, find new opportunities, and really drive innovation. So what I'd like to do to you is take you on a short little journey here. What usually takes me 6 presentations and 2 to 3 hours as I go into a company and try and introduce sustainability over the course of a few months. I'm going to try to do that in 5 minutes and 4 slides. So I don't know how successful this is going to be, but hopefully it gives you a flavor for what I do when I try to help organizations. Next slide. So I always start with why. Why are we doing this? Why is sustainability important? And if I can get through to the why and have organizations understand why they're doing this or should be interested in it, the rest really takes care of itself. And what I do is I really look at things from a stakeholder view. Every organization has multiple stakeholders interested in the organization: employees, customers, investors, communities, supply chain members, regulatory agencies, social sentiment, non-governmental organizations are just 8 of them. There's many more, but these are the primary 8 that are increasingly putting pressure in a sustainable direction on the organization. And I just want to point out a few. The World Wildlife Federation recently came out with a study that said that there's been a 71% rise in online searches for sustainable goods and services. Customers are looking for it. Investors, sustainability programs increase value. The company I work for know that organizations with sustainability embedded in their organization, they're worth more. They sell at higher multiples. Supply chain members, 92% of the S&P 500 have a sustainability program that they report on. It's just a matter of time before they come upstream and look for those small and medium-sized companies that they can connect with. They're looking for like-minded vendors to do business with. In regulation, the Financial Accounting Standards Board, or FASB, was formed in the 1970s to set standards around financial accounting. That's what we see all the time on the finance side. Well, there's now SASB, the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board, who was organized in 2011, who are trying to standardize sustainability measures. I can see in 10, 15 years from now, where just like a financial report, you're going to have to put together a sustainability accounting or a report of some kind of standard. So once we can establish the why are organizations feeling these pressures from their stakeholders, we move into how. How do we go about implementing some of these changes that we're seeing? And what we do is we put companies through a materiality assessment. When you think about the word materiality, think about the word importance. That's really what it means. Materiality allows the business to prioritize the issues most important to the business and its stakeholders. So any business is going to have multiple issues to address, but what they really want to do is address the ones that are most important or most material. So think about a plastic bag manufacturing firm or a doctor's office or a private equity firm, completely different businesses. And what a materiality assessment allows them to do is figure out what are the issues most important or most material to that organization. Next slide. So once we've determined what are the most important issues, we have to implement authentic actions to address those issues and then communicate those actions back to stakeholders. So I teach an 8-step process to authenticate. And why do we authenticate? Because we want to avoid greenwashing. Greenwashing is when a company conveys a false impression or provides misleading information about how the company engages in sustainability. Think about a package. If you pick up a package and it says this package was made from recycled content, and it comes to find out that only 1% of it was made from recycled content, that's misleading and that's greenwashing, and that can get you in trouble. So what this 8-step process does, and I think it's the most important part, is you're authenticating the actions you're doing to support the issues that you've prioritized. Next slide. So if I could put sustainability into just 4 words, it's these 4s. Stakeholders, they help you identify issues. Materiality, that helps you prioritize the issues. Authenticate, you want to authenticate actions to address the prioritized issues. Now you communicate what you've done back to stakeholders. So you sort of have this circular. You start with stakeholders, You go through this process. Now you communicate back to stakeholders of the authentic actions that you did. The diagram on the left I really like because there's an F piece, ESG plus F. What's the F? F is for financial. The best companies, it can't be purely philanthropic. The best companies who engage in this, they land their efforts and are rooted in good financial business decisions based on their organization. Next slide. So I'll go quickly through this case study, which sort of touches on each of those steps. So say that you were a plastic bag manufacturer, and say your issue was plastic waste. Plastic waste is all over the news. There's an anti-plastic narrative for sure. They have to address this issue. There's multiple actions you could take to address that issue. You could participate in a community cleanup effort. You could engage in a labeling process where you label your packages better about what to do with them at the end of life. Say instead, one of the authentic actions that this company chose to do was to provide alternative materials that had a more sustainable footprint as opposed to what they did or they were currently doing. So step one, current state, the company had no alternative materials. So that was where they were at the very beginning. Step two, benchmark against others. They looked at other similar companies that they competed with. There wasn't much out there. The bigger companies had a few options, so they had some insights into where to go. Step three, stakeholders. Looked at their stakeholders and said, is this important to them? Yes. Owners saw it as an opportunity to generate new sales. Investors saw it as a way to reduce risk. Employees saw it as a way to work for a more purpose-driven company. And communities saw it as a benefit to live near a company with sustainability as a primary piece of their identity. Step four, materiality. We understand it's important to both the company and stakeholders. Next slide. Now, step 5 and 6 is where we authenticate. Step 5, the company went out and found 10 different materials. They trialed them and they narrowed down to three different ones: a bio-based, compostable, and a post-consumer recycled content. They found these three, but they had to go through a long process to get to them. Step 6 is when you internally educate your employees. The materials that they chose were harder to run. They had to go to the employees and say, this is why we're doing this. You had to sort of inform your service, sales, and production departments about what you're doing and why you're doing it. Now, after all those steps are done, now you externally communicate. Now you go back to your stakeholders because you have authentic actions in place and you're ready to go. And then step 8, you're periodically reviewing. If you need to retrain, if there's another material out there, what are your stakeholders saying about it? You can go back to a step and then start going. So what's the result of all this? 3 years after the issue was identified, sustainable materials now account for $500,000 in annual sales for this plastic bag manufacturing company. And I'll leave with this before I turn over the presentation. Only 17% of small and medium-sized businesses have a sustainability plan publicized. And I mentioned 92% of the S&P 500 do. So those 92% are going to be looking to partner with the small and medium-sized businesses, and to have a sustainability plan in place and have some initiatives moving will benefit the company. So thank you, and I'll turn it over to Pallavi.
Perfect. Thank you, Trent. I think the case study that you went through really highlights the work that your plastic bag manufacturer did to reduce its Scope 3 emissions. And over the next few slides, we'll be going over how to address businesses' Scope 1 and 2 emissions. And one of these ways, a very easy way to do it, is to signing up to a program called Community Solar. A few of you may be aware of it, some may not be. What I will say is certain states are a bit more advanced than other states in community solar programs. An example would be New York. And so I'd like to first go over what community solar is and how it works. So essentially, community solar is an offsite, a few solar panels on an offsite location over typically 40 to 50 acres of unused land. And a developer such as us, so OER Renewables, would be in charge of finding that land, putting the panels on the land, and developing it from start to finish. Now, once the project starts operating, the energy generated from that facility is fed directly into the utility grid. And so if you're from the New York area, so these utilities could be National Grid, NYSEG, ORU and RG&E, you will continue to get powered through those utilities. The only difference is that once you sign up to our program, you'll see a credit or a discount applied directly to your utility bill once you sign up. And so an example of that on-bill savings or consolidated bill savings is on the right-hand side. You'll see where it's highlighted, you'll see that discount appear on your bill directly. So for a medium-sized business in New York with an annual electricity cost of approximately $100,000, you will see a savings of around $10,000 a year. And so that's the benefit of community solar is you'll see that discount that kind of averages around the 10% range per year. So over 10 years, if you look at that, accumulate, that'll be $100,000. So very significant financial benefit to your company. And on the ESG side of things, or from an ESG standpoint, your impact would be taking off 100 cars off the road. And that would be, if you want to get a bit technical, would be equivalent to reducing 430 carbon dioxide metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions. So overall, a significant impact, both from an ESG standpoint, but also from a financial standpoint. Now, I'm sure you're wondering how you could subscribe to a plan. It's really simple. So we would, as the developer of the project, we would look at your most recent utility bill. It would take us a few minutes to analyze it and then kind of give you an understanding of what project we have availability on. So we have some projects in certain utilities in New York. So we would find an ideal CapEx or any money towards this initiative and create local power projects that increase regional grid resiliency.
So I'm so sorry, Pallavi. We did actually, your sound cut out there for about a minute there, and I don't want anybody to miss this key information. So I apologize, but could you just back up and repeat yourself again?
Absolutely. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Should I, just wondering if I could get some help in figuring out where it stopped. Would it be the subscribing process?
Yeah, I would start at the subscription process, and people could always learn more about it.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll link our contact information. Sorry about the technical issue there, but so just to go over the subscribing process or the signing up process to a community solar project, it's a very straightforward process, simple steps. You would just work with the developer of the community solar project, such as OER Renewables. So someone from our team can help you look at your most recent utility bill, and we would just assess what your load profile looks like how much are you using a year, and we would then find a project in your utility territory that you can sign up to, and then formalize a spot on that particular project through a very standard, simple agreement. I'm going to pause there and just check if everyone can hear me still. Very good. So just to conclude this slide, by joining a community solar project in your local community, your business can very easily able to support renewable energy in the community, not spend any money towards, CapEx, capital expenditure that can go towards putting up your own panels on your property. And you're still, helping create local power grid resiliency as well as reduce emissions in your community. Now, I thought it would be important to just highlight and distinguish a community solar facility with an on-site or a traditional rooftop structure. So I'm sure everyone is very familiar with a traditional rooftop structure where you're putting panels on your own property. And so one of the requirements almost for that solution is that you have to own the property. With community solar, on the other hand, owning your property is not needed. If you lease your commercial space, you can still sign up to the facility and benefit from the savings right away. Secondly, when you implement a rooftop solution, you might have to spend your own capital funds or obtain financing to get a contractor to design and install the panels. And to give some context to that, for a 65,000 square foot property space or rooftop space, it would cost approximately $1 to $1.5 million for a rooftop project. So you could either spend, that significant amount of dollars to own your own panels, or you could outsource that function to a contractor, and they would help you with that solution. On the contrary, with community solar, there's no sign-up costs or payments needed, as the community solar developer, in this case, it would be Oya Renewables, would be responsible for the construction, installation, and operating and maintenance of the project over 20 to 35 years. So a lot of that hassle and the costs involved with putting your own panels is basically being eliminated through a community solar facility. And finally, when it comes to savings on your utility bill, with community solar, your savings would approximately 10% of your total.
Pallavi, again, you have cut out your sound.
Okay, sorry.
There, you're back in. Okay. Oh, you have cut out again, unfortunately.
Can we just go to that? What is energy transition platform?
Yeah, and then once Pallavi is back on at the end, if she's missed anything or wants to add anything, we can simply move back to her. So yes, let's move on to Graham.
Perfect.
I'm unmuted, right? I believe so. So good afternoon, everybody. So I'm taking over from Pallavi, who's really talking about on the community solar, everything that's off-site. And I'm talking about how to make the stuff that is on-site at your facility, how to make that work and in a cost-effective manner. Can you go through to the next slide? Why do we need an energy transition platform? We really need it because it's not that easy. It's not that simple. There's a technical side to it. I explain it to my kids. You put 3 hair dryers on the same circuit and you blow the breaker. You've got to put in a bigger breaker. If you put 3 EV chargers, you've got the same sort of deal. You're bumping up the load and you're going to blow things. So the infrastructure has a problem. Then there's the financing side of it. Everybody's well aware of all the different incentive plans and everything that are out there. It is very, very complex, and it's evolving every single day. And then there is the product side of things, where the technology is just getting better and better and better, and remaining at the forefront of that is a challenge. And then looking at this picture, integrating all of these technologies in an optimized manner is in its own right a challenge, and throwing in on top of that, integrating them all in an optimized manner over a long period of time is a real challenge. So Oya has developed a holistic energy transition platform called our energy as a service model, with a subcomponent being just plain charging as a service. Like underlying that is this whole concept that under the whole ESG or the environmental trend, we want to try and access all the different new revenue streams and incentives. And this is key. We want to ensure that these systems that we put in operate at an uptime which is equal to or better than the current systems. And 3, we want to do it in a way that provides you kilowatt hours in a cheaper manner than what you're currently paying for your kilowatt hours. So it's quite a challenge. In that whole energy as a service model, we've got a very, very nice package to talk you through. Next slide, please. hang on one second. I've got a new PC here, and I'm just trying to get the whole thing figured out. Okay, so I wanted to focus on a specific aspect of this whole energy transition, and that is the EV side. I see the market that there's two real short-term catalysts which are driving a ton of the initiatives which are happening out there right now, and one is re-roofing and rooftop solar, but two, and it's dramatic what is happening, is on the EV charging side. It all falls underneath what I call the electrification of everything. But this EV charging, next slide, please. This EV charging it's a dramatic macroeconomic shift all over the place. Now, like getting through the sort of technical details, it really comes down to electricity here is the new oil, and there is an opportunity to really buy and sell for a profit through the charging systems. There's an opportunity to get on this bandwagon, and there's a ton of these things are going to go in, and there's a whole bunch of benefits around them. So next slide, please. Okay, so this, when we're talking about EV charging, and I just wanted to just take a few seconds and go through the sort of broad spectrum that there is. Each one of these opportunities, each one of these sectors, we can dig down into and get into the real sort of peculiarities and the different requirements for each one of these sectors. It is a broad spectrum of product, and the profitability, the opportunity to remain at the bleeding edge and make the revenues that you need. You really do need a customed solution. If I just go back to what I said about those hair dryers, if you've got to increase the demand charge, you've got to increase the size of the pipe coming in. It's going to cost a whole bunch of money. So how can you work around this existing infrastructure and minimize the impact on cost, and get down to the lowest incoming dollar per kilowatt hour? That's really where we focus, and we've got the ability to customize technical solutions and commercial solutions around each one of these different sections, whether it's a fleet or whether it's an apartment, you name it. We have these solutions for you. So I've got a couple of slides here, and this is based on a drive-through restaurant, but just some of the benefits that they do have, and it's going back to what Trent spoke about, just in terms of your, on the financial side, you put in a charger, you get the direct charging revenue, and that's all great. And whether you want to put in a high-speed charger, or whether you want to put in a level 2 charger, that's really strategic. It comes down to the dwell time that people are expecting to stay there and whether the cars can accept it. There's a bunch of elements on that. What is very, very interesting, though, is the tag along revenue. So, and what people are seeing, just you're getting people coming through to your site, and they're sitting for their hour to charge up their car, and they're spending money, and they're coming to your site to charge because you're in the right location or whatever. There really is a mutual benefit and a significant value add. So the environmental benefits, the tons of carbon, all of that is great, but the commercial sense is solid. And that is on just a fast food restaurant chain. As we as we dig into the game and we just see where it's all evolving, the benefits on this move are also, they get into the sort of, they're tangible, but they're not direct. One of the key ones would be resilience, the resilience of systems as you're putting in distributed generation, energy storage, charging, all of these different aspects. You are really building up this distributed generation, these microsystems out there, and you're not reliant on what is a very, very challenged grid at the moment. So next slide, please. The EV microgrids. This is where I really wanted to focus on this for a second, because this is where this whole game is all headed. Instead of just having plain basic charging, it is taking a step further forward and looking at what the grid needs, what the world needs to keep these things up and running, to get your uptime as your stated objective, your uptime on these systems to perform for a long period of time. And this integrated system, this has got 4 chargers, it's got an energy storage system. I could add in solar thermal, I can add in geothermal, I could add in PV, you name it. Controlling all of those together is, it's a challenge. And that's where we come into the equation, and that's where we start playing really nicely. So if I just wanted to put in energy charging, EV charging, then I would be looking at charging as a service concept. But if I want to put in the complete sort of microgrid system with all of these different aspects, the capital costs goes up significantly, but there are a whole bunch of other revenue streams and incentive streams that we apply against it over time. And you end up with a pretty darn good looking business model on these things. Next slide, please. So yeah, just getting down into that on a very high level, charging as a system and charging as a service and energy as a service. What the whole philosophy behind the way we design these solutions is, it allows you to put in the hardware and have it operational, and we assist on all of that. It's zero upfront investment. We are targeting the lowest delivered kilowatt hour through to the chargers or to the facility, and we're doing that in a way that has an uptime over 10 years generally, with extensions on it. Whether you want to buy the system outright and operate it yourself, which is absolutely a way a lot of folks do it, we totally support that. But what we are really seeing just massive pickup on is on this sort of off-balance sheet concept, where we own the equipment and we operate the equipment, but the benefits, specifically the charging revenues that would come out of the EV system and the lower kilowatt hour price that you would get, those are yours. This allows participation on a site basis over a long period of time. There are just so many different ways that we can take this, and this evolution in terms of the incentives that are out there, and just trying to remain current with it. That's Oyer has this end-to-end, like we've got all these folks working on these things the whole time. It really is something that it's very tough to try and do it on your own. You need a partner on this, and this is exactly the solution we're offering. It is yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to chat to any of you and explore your opportunities with you. I've got a passion for this stuff. Thanks very much. Over and back to you, Pallavi.
Thank you. Thanks, Graham. Can everyone hear me okay? Amazing. We'll just move another slide down. I think Graham covered a lot of this material. Perfect. So I'd like to just ask Trent to just start with doing a quick reiteration of the importance of ESG. I know you went over that already, but I'd like to just hand it over to you to just conclude, and then I'll step in right after.
Yeah, so I'm just came back after 3 days at the Sustainable Packaging Coalition. It's the largest packaging and material coalition in North America. 500 different brands and companies went to Austin, Texas for, it's still going on. So I jetted out of there last night so I could be here. How about that? And one of the sessions was put forth by McKinsey Consulting, and they went through their findings from a worldwide survey of what they called mega trends in packaging and material flows. And by far the number one packaging and material flow trend from the consumer standpoint was sustainability requirements increasing at every step of the value chain. Every step. What's that mean? And wherever you are on the value chain of the product or service that you provide, sustainability is likely to be a part of your offering or your requirement moving forward. And when we talk about custom, I don't, and Graham really talked about that, and I think that's so important, is there's not one path, there's not one ESG path, and there's certainly not a perfect path. And what we try and do, or I try and do with the companies I interact with, is to try and find your path, right? We're trying to prioritize the issues that are most material to you in your business, and then act on them. And, just sort of in this conversation, it struck me, if your issue is you're trying to address climate change, one of the actions you can take is community solar. And the way you communicated that, and Pallavi and Graham did a great job of communicating it back with, how much CO2 you're saving and those things. So it's all really connected to sort of having a process in place by which you can address the issues most material or most important to you.
Thank you, Trent. You took the words out of my mouth right there. So I will just add a few points to this. I think it's daunting, just with all of these different disclosure requirements. As some of you may know, there's new SEC rules that are coming your way, at least for publicly listed companies, where they have to report on their scope 1, 2, 3 emissions, and then with that, enforcements may trickle in. There's that happening. There's like a lot of these other standards, like there's the GRI, there's, SASB. So there's a lot going on. I think 2 key messages for me would just be start somewhere, start anywhere. It doesn't have to be perfect. Start with the low-hanging fruit. Low-hanging fruit would be something like community solar, no cost, easy to sign up. You can get out of the subscription at any point if you want, depending on your load. So that's one. And number 2, work with experts in the field like Trent, work with us. I mean, at least from an initial discussion that you can have with us, it doesn't have to be, if you want to just do a very high level discovery session, we're happy to do just a one-on-one with your business. I'd say those are the 2 key messages from me. And just finally, I think that concludes it. Really, we'd like to open it up for questions and to hear from you. And we'd like to just end with a few different points on what Oya Renewables is really quickly. And if you could turn over to the next slide. I would say, just to Graham's point, I'd say 2 or 3 benefits about working with Oya and why we stand out is that we're able to package all these different technologies and provide it to you as a one holistic solution, right? And so that is a benefit, because if you're thinking about incorporating EV chargers, geothermal, community solar, you can come just to one partner such as us, and we'll take you through from start to finish. to operating and maintaining it over the long term. And then we'll be leveraging all the different funding available to bring you a cost-efficient solution. And then finally, too, I think Graham brought up a really good point about, we're in an environment that is challenging from, of course, in a lot of different aspects. And one of them would be, high interest rates, higher costs, just bringing a lot of pressure on your bottom line. And so in response to that, we are able to offer a zero down off balance sheet financing solution that doesn't hurt your bottom line even further. So with that, I'd love to conclude with just wishing everyone a happy Earth Day and week that just passed. So I think it's a great time to remind ourselves about the importance of keeping the Earth sustainable and just not just celebrating it just the 1 week, but practicing it every day to build a cleaner, brighter future. So thank you for attending, and we'd love to turn it over to you to hear from you and see what questions you have for us today.
So while we wait for some questions to come in, I think I'll just pose one to each of the participants. If there's one clear takeaway that you would like everybody just to remember from today, if you could just share what that is. And maybe I'll start with Trent, since he has the most time to think, since he spoke at the beginning. So I'm going to pick on you.
And Pallavi said it. I think when you begin to educate yourself a little bit on the sustainability and environmental social governance, you suddenly realize you're already doing some of these things. So we always talk about in the sessions that I have about, let's define the current state. And that's kind of that step one. And most people are already doing some of these things like waste reduction and doing good things for employees and community efforts and things. So let's get those documented and then get them posted. And I think that gives people confidence in terms of, oh, we're actually this isn't something totally new, but it's sort of beginning to make it more strategic in sort of how to move forward. So it's almost a sense of you're already doing some of this and we can push it one step further.
Thanks, Trent. Okay, so and then I'm going to turn it over to Grant. And there's actually one question. Oh, sorry, Grant. Oh my God, terrible. I'm terrible. So I'll turn it over to Graham, and he can answer the question. And then we do have one question that came in about what the difference between level 2 and level 3 chargers is. And so this is actually really appropriate for Graham to answer.
So just addressing the level 2 and the level 3 chargers. So in essence, a level 2 charger, it'll charge at about 30. I think like the number is about 30 kilometers an hour or miles an hour, whereas a level 3 charger is around 100. If I just on the technical side, a level 2 charger is an AC/DC connected solution. It's designed for sort of overnight charging or longer stays. The level 3 chargers are like they're getting way up there in speed now. And these are designed around your sort of en route highway charging or very short charging periods. So if you've got half an hour and you want to charge while you're en route somewhere, it's the ideal charger for that sort of application. They obviously draw categorically different amounts of power from the grid, and the design for them is different. Yeah, the one's a heck of a lot more expensive than the other one too. So, but you can make those just depending on the application, and customizing around the application is really what you've got to do. So, and that's where we can help. Yeah. But answering your question earlier, what the key takeaway is, the real key takeaway for me is that there's an environmental basis to all of this. It makes smart sense, but done right, it also makes a heck of a lot of commercial sense too. And yeah, that's the That's the real takeaway if I have to leave that.
Yeah, so we do have thanks, Graham, and I won't call you Grant again, or maybe later. We do have a couple of housekeeping questions that I'm just going to take care of right away. So yeah, we do have the email addresses of the presenters. So I'm just going to pop those ones on the screen. So we have Graham and Pallavi there, and then I'm also going to share, I'm going to allow Trent to talk about his book in just a minute here. And then also we have a couple questions about community solar, which I'm going to direct to Pallavi. So one is how close you need to be to a community solar project to subscribe. And I'm just going to throw the other one at you to Pallavi. And this one is about Michigan. And I think we have a lot of experience with this particular question in New York, which I think Pallavi can apply some of the principles. And I'm going to get to the question. I'll read it out to you, so don't worry. Michigan is in the process of writing community solar into law. The rules for how community solar operates will be determined by the Public Service Commission. If you could add several rules to ensure social justice and to help decentralize utility control over renewables, what might you suggest? So first, how close do you need to be? And then let's talk about LMI and social justice issues around community solar, which I think is essentially one of the reasons why community solar was developed in the first place.
Really good question. So I'll start with I would call it an easy question about the location and the distance from your business or home from the community solar project. The answer really is you don't have to be close at all. The only key thing to keep in mind is that you are in the same utility territory. An example would be if you're in New York and you're powered by the NYSEG utility, you'd have to be at a project that is powered by the same utility. So you could be 10 kilometers away, you could be 200 kilometers away. As long as you're powered by the same utility, you can sign up to a CS facility. So that should answer your question, and feel free to let me know where you're located and we'd be happy to reach out to you. The second question is a great question, and we may want to hop on a one-on-one to discuss that further, but I think I'll use New York as a blueprint or a great example on how social justice is ensured, or at least they have tried to make it equitable, make community solar equitable, is by now providing incentives for community solar developers to first of all promote community solar to low moderate income communities, and just from studies we see that low moderate income communities have a higher energy burden, and as electricity costs go up, they're basically affected the most versus a large company that may not feel not be as affected or not as sensitive to high electricity costs. So integrating access to low moderate income communities it is not a rule at this time in New York, but it's definitely, I see it getting there, where they're going to impose like a certain project that has to be dedicated to LMI. I think some states already have that as a rule. I want to say, don't quote me on this, I want to say Illinois is one of them, and maybe Virginia. So you could definitely, I would propose that into a community solar model. And then I think the other question was a rule to help decentralize utility control over renewables. I wish that was possible. I don't know how that would be. I mean, it's hard to do that when the utility has a lot of control, of course. And what I will say is, again, in New York, I think having a lot of these working groups have been helpful. We work closely with the utilities on any issues that come up in community solar. A lot of them have been related to billing. So previously in New York, when the program was first introduced, there was no concept of on-bill savings. Okay, so the community solar bill would come through a separate bill that a customer would have to pay to the developer. So it basically was a complicated billing mechanism. And through working groups and talking to the utility, a lot of feedback was provided. And now we're in a couple years later. It was hard. I'll be honest, it was hard. It was not easy to implement this, but through a lot of these coalition groups that developers are a part of, we're able to advocate for the consumer essentially and make the billing mechanism easier. So I think it's very possible. I think it's just a lot of communication is needed, advocating from the developer world as well as from consumers at the end of the day, because they're the ones, they're the ones that are benefiting from the solution. That's very important. So I hope that answered the questions, but again, happy to jump on a call with you, a one-on-one. Any more community solar questions? If not, we'll hand it over to Trent to just talk about his book and where to find him.
So we have one last question from LinkedIn, and this is a very general one. So maybe we'll get Trent just to talk about his book first, and then we can then move on to our last question, and then we'll end the session. And yeah, Gary, I'm glad that you enjoyed the session. So over to you, Trent. If you could just talk about your book for a minute, we'll give you this chance.
Sure. I have sort of this side hobby for years of writing. I enjoy the process, although it's hard. I'm not that great of a writer, but through time and edits and editors, they really help me. Anyway, I really write to tell a story. So instead of, it doesn't read like the books that I try and write don't read like a textbook or anything like that. But I think you're going to learn about sustainability through the books that I write. The first one is more of a professional book, how we moved our company in a more sustainable direction, which is called Finding Sustainability. And the second book called This Is Our Home, the cover just came out. It will be released in September of this year. And I grew up next to a Superfund site. I don't know if folks know what Superfund sites are, but they are sites that are deemed needing funding for help in cleaning them up because of environmental degradation over the course of time. There's over 1,300 Superfund sites in America today. 22% of Americans live within 3 miles of a Superfund site. So a lot of sort of personal, it got me allowed me to write about my hometown and talk about sustainability and Superfund sites and things like that. I do have a newsletter. I have an online course coming out. And anyway, so you find all this information at my website is probably the best way. And you could always direct message me on any of the socials that you sort of see there.
Thanks, Trent. So yeah, you can find his book at any of these places, and you've been very, very prolific. So our last question is from LinkedIn, and it's, how is sustainable energy useful for developing countries? And I guess maybe we can throw that one at Graham first, and then anybody else can jump in when they have something to say.
So you're climbing on my accent, is that it? So originally from South Africa. So how is sustainable development useful for developing countries? It is there is a question of on the basic side, do you want the whole world to be at X standard and define happiness? And that's a whole another discussion. But in terms of having access to basic infrastructure and sustainable development allows third-party investment and development of infrastructure to bring basic requirements and more than basic requirements to remote parts of developing countries. I just on a personal note, my father got me involved about 20 years ago on 2 village electrification projects in Malawi. And we ended up putting in water pumps driven by bicycles and you name it. I experienced it firsthand. And when these people see fresh water coming, it's wonderful. Yeah, I've got goosebumps talking about it. So that's it from my side.
Pallavi or Trent, do you have anything to add? Just a reminder, the question is like, how is sustainable energy useful for developing countries?
Well, there's a lot that I have. I'll stick to one point or one answer, is that just simply increasing energy security, energy resiliency. And I'll give you an example of what we saw when there was a Ukraine-Russia war. There were a lot of these COVID was another macroeconomic event that took place that just created a lot of volatility, and during those times, we saw our dependency on fossil fuels, right? We saw a lot of businesses were affected by just volatility on price. And I think renewable energy and sustainability can provide security, can provide sustainability, of course, and just reduce our dependency on dirty fuel. Simply, that's essentially it. We're increased. I don't know where the attendees from, but we're up here in North America. I'm definitely not complaining about abnormal summer temperatures in March, but that's different from the weather and climate is essentially changing, and I think it's time to take action. And that's how depending on us adopting renewable energy will just help us mitigate the damage on the environment and make for a more sustainable community. So that's my short answer. I do have more thoughts, but I'll stop there.
Thanks, Pallavi. And Trent?
Yeah, I think I'll leave the energy questions to the energy experts. Any step towards cleaner energy and greater access, I think, is a win.
Perfect. That's a great note to end on. So again, if anybody has questions, you can see our email addresses are there on the screen. I shared Trent's information a little bit earlier, so you can also reach out to Trent if you have any questions directly. If we receive anything for Trent, we will of course pass it on. We have recorded this session, and so we will be posting that on our website either tomorrow or the day after, and be sharing it with the people who have registered and have attended. So again, thank you very much to all of our presenters. It was a rich hour, and I was glad to hear from all of you. And again, if you have any questions, reach out, and have a great rest of your day.